Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research and to our Spring Policy Forum on Homelessness in California. I am Mark Duggan, the Trione Director of SIEPR and the Wayne and Jodi Cooperman Professor of Economics here at Stanford. This is our first very big event at SIEPR since since March of 2020. So it's nice to be. So when the pandemic shut everything down, and I'm really thrilled that you're all joining us. And I know everyone in this room is super busy, has a lot going on, so we sincerely appreciate your engagement with us today on obviously an important topic. One thing I just want to say at the outset is this issue about masks. So do whatever you feel you're comfortable with. You're not required to do anything. So it's up to you. Make your own decisions. I think someone said to me I should slightly encourage it. I'm probably not going to wear one. Anyway, I let everyone, each of you, make your own call on that. For those of you who are new to our orbit, or maybe just joining us for the first time, the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research is, I believe, the university's home for addressing the biggest economic policy challenges and opportunities of our time. We have more than 100 faculty affiliates, including 3 Nobel laureates who draw from each of Stanford's 7 schools. And that means we have scholars studying a broad set of issues, like healthcare, like energy and the environment, politics, education, taxes, and much, much more, all primarily through the prism of economics. And today, we are turning our attention to the incredibly pressing issue of homelessness in California, which involves so many factors. And when I talked about sort of doing this event several months ago with people here and others, a phrase that I would frequently hear is homelessness, that's really hard. And so why not, I'm a glutton for punishment. So I think that I just want to say that we, as a nonpartisan academic research institution, I think we're well positioned to bring together a vast array of experts and ideas and hold everyone to the same sort of unbiased, rigorous level of examination to try to get to the heart of what might make for sound and effective policy. And we approach this with a lot of humility and understand that no one is going to leave here with all the answers. No one here today has all the answers. But we would love it if everyone from today gets new ideas, begins thinking about potential new approaches for policy or for the nonprofit or broader private sector, and understand how important it is to get our hands on data that can inform the path forward. So SIEPR has become increasingly involved in California-specific economic research. When I say economic, I take a broad perspective of what constitutes economic. And we've recently launched the California Policy Research Initiative, also known as CAPRI, to double down on issues that are specific to this state, which also happens to be, if it were a country, the world's 5th largest economy, measured in terms of GDP. So in addition to studying homelessness, we're taking on big issues like taxation and government spending, climate and energy, educational attainment, economic mobility, and much more. During the past year, we've had some really terrific speakers, all virtual. So, for example, last month, we had the chair of President Biden's Council of Economic Advisors, Cecilia Rouse. A month before that, we had the Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen. And we've had many other terrific people in recent months, all virtual though. So today, this is in person, and it's super exciting for us. We also, about 2 weeks from today, we're going to host another event that examines the future of governance in California. And all the research that we're generating and the events that we're holding are meant to move the needle in Sacramento, the country's other 49 state capitals, and in Washington, D.C., hopefully in a better direction. Yeah, that would be good. We would like to do that. I will say, I have had this phrase, for those of you who may remember that book, Men are from Mars, Women are from Venus. I feel a little bit like that with academia and policymakers. So if anyone has any great ideas of how to bridge that, I'd love to hear them. But that's why many of you, we reached out so much to many of you here today. We always welcome suggestions for how we can do better to get our research on the radar screen of people. But not like we have all the answers. We don't have a view like, oh, we're gonna swoop in and tell you, government, how to do this. Someone's got a phone on, I think. I don't know. But anyway, I hear something, but it's fine. I'll work through it. You just never know what is gonna come your way on any given day. We're not producing scholarship solely for the sake of creating knowledge. Creating knowledge is good, but our outreach and engagement efforts are meant to get this knowledge connected with policymakers, with journalists, with business leaders, and with others who can influence and create real change and improvements in the realm of economic policy. I do believe that as Stanford University, I think we have a responsibility to sort of do our best to help on thorny issues like this one. And so it is, especially issues that differentially affect the most disadvantaged. Students also play a huge role here at SIEPR. We support undergraduates, pre-docs, doctoral students who are interested in immersing themselves in economic policy research. We also host economists from other institutions who are early in their careers, but are rising stars in the field. And a very, very important part of our mission is investing in the next generation of economic policymakers and scholars and making sure these up-and-comers are representing diverse perspectives, ideas, and experiences in order to shape policies that benefit everyone with an eye toward both equity and efficiency. And those are both a big part of the topic that we're delving into today. Homelessness is a nationwide problem, but one that I think is particularly severe here in California. On any given night, the best estimates suggest there are more than 160,000 people who are homeless in the state, and for a bit of context, that's about the size of nearby cities of Salinas or Hayward. The number homeless per capita in California is about 3 times the level in the rest of the US. During the last 6 years, it has increased. The data's not perfect, but the best available data suggests that during the past 6 years, it has increased by 42% in California, while it has fallen by 9% in the rest of the US. So we're going to be trying to look at the reasons for this and what can be done about it. But again, today's discussion is definitely not meant to be an end-all, be-all examination of this issue. And one of the things that we, I believe, need to get our arms around here in order to really study homelessness is the data problem. I do think that the private sector has in many realms mastered the use of data to greatly improve operations. And I think we need to get better linkages between public agencies that touch homelessness so we can have more real-time, in-depth data about how various government services are assisting the homeless, what effect they're having, and how we can tweak and improve and constantly try to get better. We've got city governments, county governments, state governments, the nonprofit sector, and many others. We've got different agencies within the same city or county or state government, and it's hard for anyone to have 20/20 vision on what's happening, how things are changing, and how we are doing with respect to our interventions. So anything that anyone can do to improve the data quality in this space, which I believe has been an impediment to my field of economics working on this topic, I would be very grateful. And when we have better insights, we can have a better understanding of which policy levers need to be pulled or pushed to make improvements on this hard issue. And I think one thing maybe we'll talk about today is what should be the objective of policy in the nonprofit sector here. Should it be to lower the number of homeless? Is that the one cause? Or are there other, what I think, talking about those sorts of things I think would be great today. And I want to say with humility, I'm not an expert on homelessness by any means, so probably pretty much everyone in this room knows more about this issue than I did, so I'm looking forward to learning a lot in the next 10 hours and 45 minutes. You all received a survey that we sent a few days ago that was meant to gauge your thoughts on homelessness. 98% of respondents to that survey, and we had met quite a few respondents, say homelessness policies are on the wrong track in California. 2/3 say it is not a money issue, but that we need to examine better how money is spent. The surveys aren't necessarily correct, but that is, we think, pretty reflective, pretty informative. And when asked what you wanted to hear most about today, there was huge interest on basically all of the panels that we're going to hear about today. So I think it's going to be a really terrific day. One thing I want to flag is if at some point you just get tired of being in this room, we have an overflow room next door where we are, what's it called, live streaming the event? Is that what it's called? We're live streaming the event. So if you just need to get a little distance from everybody, your neighbor is kind of annoying you or what have you, just go in there and all is good. We're not live streaming to the world, although we are recording things, and my understanding is our plan is to distribute this later. So to the extent that you think there are any sessions in here that are really good and you want to share with your friends or family or any colleagues or anyone else, feel free to do so. Before I turn things over to my colleague Jialu Streeter, who has done an enormous amount of research on homelessness in California over the last few months, and an even bigger amount of work organizing this policy forum, I also want to thank every one of our speakers and panelists and moderators for taking time from their very busy schedules to be with us today. We have a wide range of experts, we have advocates, we have politicians, we have scholars, we have business people, nonprofit leaders and others to share their thoughts and perspectives, and I'm very, very, very grateful. Also a huge thanks to our supporters who are committed to SIEPR's work and our mission. What we do would not be possible without their partnership and support. And as SIEPR's director, I'm very, very fortunate to work with such an amazingly dedicated and talented staff. They are the ones who are responsible for making this place run so beautifully, and I certainly couldn't do any of this. I couldn't be up here without them, so I'm very grateful. And now let me pass the baton to Jialu Streeter, our Director of Partnerships and a SIEPR research scholar, who is also the author of a just-released policy brief. Is it out? It's out, okay, it's up. And it is, would you call it a page-turner, Jialu? I think it is. And a SIEPR research scholar. Jialu, thank you for all the hard work you've put into this issue and on today's event, and here we go.
Thank you, Mark, so much for your leadership and support for this project. And I'm really excited to be here. Great to see all of you. And during the last several months when I was working on this project intensively, I was very, very fortunate to know many of you great folks who are working in this domain, compassionate people who are doing great work, and they're also very generous in sharing their time and expertise with me. So I'm just really grateful to all your support. Thank you. And my job today here is to just give a status quo update. Okay, so can you see? Okay, got it. All right, I'm too short. You can see how much shorter I am compared to Mark. Okay, all right. So Mark already mentioned the pre-conference survey, so I will just go through that really very quickly. We know that majority of the people think homelessness in California is not on the right track, for sure. And this is up to yesterday's data. So we have 137 people who responded to the survey. And 2/3 of the respondents say homelessness is not a money issue. And you all showed a wide range of support for and interest for all the topics. And when I put answers to the open-ended question, the last question, when I ask you, what do you think are the top factors to homelessness? So I put all of your answers in this word cloud, and not surprisingly, things like housing, mental health, drug addiction came up. Okay, so what are some of the top trends in homelessness in California? In my opinion, there are two things: magnitude and speed of growth. So we know that homelessness in California is not news, but in recent years, it has severely worsened. In terms of the magnitude, the state has the largest homeless population in the US. California accounts for 12% of the US population, but 28% of the US homeless population. Speed of growth. So you can see from the top, this top graph, For many other states, homelessness is either declining or plateaued. But in California, it seems like it's rising faster and faster. And also, as Mark has already mentioned, California's homelessness rose by 42% between 2014 and 2020, while the rest of the country had a 9% decrease. Is homelessness an ever-rising issue? Maybe, because in LA County, every day, 227 became homeless. And every day, 207 people exit homeless. That means every day we have 20 more people become homeless in net. So that means we have an increase of 7,300 people per year. So that seems like it's an ever-rising issue. All right, so compared to other states, are there any specific features in California's homelessness? I think number one is unsheltered homeless. So you can see, compared with all other states, California has the highest percentage of unsheltered homeless. In comparison, New York also has a very large homelessness population, but their unsheltered population is only 5%. And here, California is also very interesting in having a very high percent of single male homeless population. So we compared to other states, we have 65% of our homeless are male, and 84% of them are not with a family. So what are the key factors? So here I listed 5 key factors, and obviously I'm missing some other major factors as well, but these 5 are aligned with our 5 panels. So in panel 1, you will hear about high housing costs and the vulnerability, economic vulnerability. In the second panel, you will hear about housing shortage, and then we will hear about lack of shelters and mental health and drug addiction issues, as well as crime and public safety in the last panel. So during my 5 to 10 minutes of time, I will just focus on a lack of shelters and a lack of treatment. So a lack of shelters, we all know that in California, unsheltered homelessness has risen by 59% between 2014 and 2020. And that's true across different cities. For example, in San Francisco, unsheltered homeless doubled over 15 years. And in Oakland, Alameda, and Berkeley, it's even worse. It tripled over 15 years. So the red bars are unsheltered population. And similarly, in the LA County, the red bars are unsheltered homeless, and 3 in 4 homeless are unsheltered. So why? Why is the share of unsheltered homeless so high in California? Well, some people may say it's weather, maybe, but I think there are some other factors at play. So in San Francisco, for example, we actually stopped building shelters for 10 years between 2004 and 2014. Many of you here probably know that. So you can see it's literally flat. This is the shelter beds in San Francisco. And after 2014, San Francisco restarted building shelter again, but it was a little too late, too little. And in comparison, we actually have built a lot of permanent supportive housing. So you can see the red lines. Those are permanent supportive housing, and those are defined as an apartment unit and sometimes a studio unit provided to chronically homeless individuals. And in comparison, the emergency shelters, transitional housing were flat. So why we build so many permanent supportive housing? Well, I mean, there is a housing first movement many of you are familiar with. There is some kind of certain wraparound services are provided at the permanent supportive housing to the homeless individuals. And then there are certain benefits associated with permanent supportive housing. But at the same time, as we all know in California, it's just too difficult to build housing, and it takes too long. So for example, in LA County, the Proposition HHH cost about $1.2 billion, and then it cost about $600,000 to build one apartment unit. It's very expensive and it takes very long. So that's, as an economist, we also need to ask, where do we spend the marginal dollar? So here, this graph I just steal from the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. They did a fantastic comparison of the cost of different from shelters all the way to affordable housing. So you can see the cost of community cabin community is about $10,000, and all the way to affordable housing is about $500,000. So where should we spend the marginal dollar? That's a question. And next, I only have a little time, so I want to just quickly go over the difficulty in accessing mental health and drug addiction treatment. So we all know that in California, compared to other states, California has a very high percent of chronically homeless in population. So what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is among the chronically homeless population, so in California, we have 1/3 of them. They have a high percentage of them have severe mental illness and or drug addiction. So about 80% of them have severe mental illness and or drug addiction. And actually, many of the experts have told me that's an underestimate. So what has caused this? Actually, I was going to say many of them actually are not receiving enough treatment as well. So why are we not treating our mentally ill patients and drug addiction patients? Well, there are many reasons, but I just want to go through some of the structural reasons. One is the institutionalization that started in the late 1950s in the US. So we all know in 1963, President John F. Kennedy signed the Community Mental Health Act into law. And after that, a lot of the state public mental health mental hospitals closed down. So you can see the number of inpatient beds in public mental hospitals declined from 330 per 100K population all the way down to 11. And at the same time, the hope at the time was to build community care in order to substitute the inhumane institutional care. But that promise did not materialize. So even when we add all the community care, community beds together, today we have about 170,000. So compared to 1955, we had 550,000. So if mental illness did not go away, where did the mental health patients go? And I just want to spend maybe just a few more minutes here. I interviewed some doctors treating patients in LA and in the Bay Area. So these are their opinions about why we have barriers for homeless in accessing treatments.
So those with severe mental illness, the super dupers who don't think anything is wrong, they don't want treatment because they don't think anything is wrong. And then when they do want help, where do you go? The emergency room? What are they going to do? They're going to start you on an antipsychotic? No, that's not what they do. Say there's a psychiatric emergency room. Are they going to start you on an antipsychotic? Probably not, because they don't know you. They don't know what's going on, like a one-time visit. Are they going to refer you to the Department of Mental Health? Yeah. When is how do you get there? Well, it's a walk-in visit. You go to a Department of Mental Health clinic, you do a walk-in visit, and they do an intake. The intake takes 3 hours. No one has that. First of all, they're waiting 3 hours. So nobody, if you're severely mentally ill, you don't have that patience. You don't have that ability to say, oh, this is going to be good for me in the long run. And so, and then to get a psychiatrist takes another 3 months. Kind
of the biggest need is the need for same day access to treatment. So basically treatment available the day you need it at the time you need it. And Santa Clara County is home to millions of people, right? San Jose itself is about 1 million people. And you think about all those other ones and you have one place. And when I say number of detox beds, I don't know the number of detox beds in there, but I want to say it's around 10. And I think the other place that you can go detox is for women, which is Mariposa. And I believe that the number of detox beds they have is under 10. And so you think about the county our size, and you think about the number of detox beds we have, and it is just not enough. And my understanding that I've heard is that there are residential beds available, but not enough detox beds to allow for folks to go into residential. So step one, so let's just look at that part. Step one, you call a 100 number. Okay, so tell me, what could be some problems for folks that are experiencing homelessness? Well, you may not have a phone, right? So step two, say you have a phone. As soon as you get on the phone, sometimes there's a hold time, there's wait time. And if there's not, you get somebody, then you start doing intake. And I've actually, because my patients notoriously have historically had a super hard time getting into programs that they need to get into, I will often use my time as a doctor sitting there in the exam room. So instead of doing my regular doctorly stuff, I will sit in the exam room on the phone with them waiting. And so often I'll be privy to some of the information that I see happening. And so, they get transferred or, and so sometimes people get dropped in the middle of transfer. I've had that happen a few times where I've had to call back and then you've got to start right over again. And then you get transferred and then you give all your information to the second person and then they transfer you again to the third person. And so often there's a lot of transferring. And at the end of the day, you're then said, okay, we are going to sign you up for this residential program. This is the phone number for this program. Go ahead and call and see if they have an availability. And so they go ahead and call. And of course, there is no availability at the day they ask. And so they're told to call back. And my understanding is that you were supposed to call back once a day until you get in. And, or sometimes people will call you. They'll say, okay, or, I've had situations where, we've had people been told that, okay, so-and-so will call you. And, you get a call on your phone and then, they happen to miss it. I miss a lot of calls sometimes. And then when they missed it, they're screwed because that's it.
All right, I want to skip a lot of my slides to stay on time, and I just want to skip to the end. Here are the list of people over 33 stakeholders in homelessness domain who I have interviewed, and based on those interviews, we made a documentary, and we also issued a policy brief, and also we are going to record this policy forum, and so all the outputs will be online. You can use this scan code and we will email you afterwards and so you can stay in touch. Thank you. Thank you so much.